Push them now. That was the last thing I heard before the boat rocked hard. My own son Andrew and his wife Sophie shoved me and my husband Harold straight into the cold, dark water of Lake Clearwater. The shock of it stole the air from my lungs, but as my body sank, I felt Harold's hand on my arm. He pulled close and raised his finger to his lips, then moved his hand flat across the surface of the water. His eyes locked on mine. Float. Don't move. It was not a plea. It was a command. In that instant, I knew we had to play dead if we wanted any chance to survive. I am so glad you are here. If you are watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where you are listening to my story of revenge from. My name is Margaret. I never thought the boy I carried in my arms would one day try to kill me. But here I was, submerged in icy water, pretending to be lifeless while the son I raised laughed above me. The boat creaked. I could hear Sophie's voice. "It's done. They won't trouble us anymore." Andrew chuckled, the sound sharp like broken glass. "About time. The house, the savings, everything will be ours." I let myself float, eyes barely open, lungs burning. I had to resist the urge to kick upward. Harold's grip was steady on my hand, reminding me we had to stay still. We let the current pull us just far enough from the boat so our bodies looked like discarded objects on the surface. Every second felt like an eternity. My mind screamed, but my face stayed slack. The lake water was cold, seeping into my bones. My hair fanned out around me like weeds. I wanted to shiver, to cough, but I bit it down. Above the gentle lap of water against the boat, I could hear Sophie again. "Do you think anyone saw us?" Andrew's tone was low, smug. "No one comes out here at this hour. By the time someone finds them, there'll be nothing but names on a police report." The words cut deeper than the water's chill. I had carried this boy in my body, fed him at my table, and now he plotted my erasure with the same calm tone he once used to ask me for dinner. Anger flared hot under my ribs, but Harold's grip pressed tighter. "Float. Don't move. Survive." We drifted slowly, our bodies carried toward the reeds near the far bank. My ears rang with every word they spoke, each one sinking like a weight. Andrew laughed again. "Finally free. Finally the money will be mine." Sophie whispered something I could not catch, but her giggle was enough. They believed we were dead. They believed they had won. I counted breaths, shallow and controlled. My chest screamed for air, but I held the rhythm Harold had shown me when we swam in summers past. The trick to surviving was not to fight the water, but to yield to it. Now that lesson saved me. When the boat finally turned back toward shore, their laughter fading with the distance, Harold and I let our bodies bob a little closer to the reeds. Only when I was sure the boat was gone did I let myself draw in a full gasp of air. The sound was harsh, raw, but it meant we were still alive. Harold's lips were pale, his chest heaving. He whispered again, but this time his voice trembled. "We live. For now." I looked at him and felt a rush of gratitude and terror all at once. We were alive, but Andrew thought we were dead. That was our only advantage. Pretending to be corpses had bought us time, but time was all it was. If Andrew discovered the truth too soon, he would try again. As the water lapped against the reeds, I knew this night was only the beginning. What Andrew had done was not just betrayal. It was war within a family, and I would not let him win. The reeds scratched against my arms as Harold pulled us closer to the bank. We crawled out of the water, clothes heavy, lungs burning, bodies trembling. For a long moment we lay there, silent, catching our breath. The night pressed in around us, the sounds of frogs and insects filling the air. My mind was racing, but one thought stayed sharp. We had survived what our son had planned. Now I had to face why he had turned into the man who wanted us gone. Lying on the damp ground, I thought of the years behind us. I thought of the sacrifices that had built the life Andrew was now so eager to steal. I saw the image of my oldest boy, David, laughing in the sunlight years ago. He had been steady, kind, protective of his brother. Then one night he was gone, taken from us at the edge of this very lake. We were told it was an accident. I wanted to believe it was, but the shadow of that night never left me. Harold and I built our home near Clearwater with nothing but determination. We raised our boys with rules and discipline, but also with love. Every hour of work we put in was for them. We skipped vacations to save for their schooling. We sold heirlooms to pay off debts when times were rough. I stayed awake through long nights of fever, rocked them through nightmares, and never once asked for more than their safety. When David died, a part of me died too. Andrew was just a teenager then, angry and restless. I poured what strength I had left into him. I thought if I gave him everything, he would grow into a man I could trust. I was wrong. Instead of gratitude, he learned to see sacrifice as weakness. Instead of respect, he carried entitlement. I wanted to deny it, but the truth had been slowly tightening around me like a noose. I remembered the first time I caught Andrew stealing from Harold's wallet. He was barely 17. I confronted him, and he swore it was just once. He cried, promised to change. I believed him. Years later, I found out he had borrowed money from friends and left them unpaid. Again, I forgave. Sophie came into the picture, smiling, sweet on the surface. She encouraged him, whispered to him, and together they grew more greedy. They wanted what was ours, long before Harold and I were ready to let it go. The memories swirled like the ripples of the lake. The past was not just a story. It was the foundation of the betrayal that had just happened. I could not lie to myself anymore. I had to admit that my sacrifices had created the ground for Andrew's cruelty. By never holding him accountable, by covering up his mistakes, I had allowed this monster to take shape under my own roof. As I looked at Harold sitting on the bank, shivering from the cold, I knew he was thinking the same. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with guilt. I had seen that look before, years ago, the night David died. I pushed the thought away, but deep down I knew Harold carried a truth he had never spoken. The silence between us was thick. Not only had we survived Andrew's attempt, but the weight of our past was pressing harder than ever. I wrapped my arms around myself and let my mind replay the birthdays, the holidays, the sacrifices. I remembered standing in the kitchen late at night, stretching $1 to feed 2 boys. I remembered Harold working his hands raw to keep the house standing. Every bit of effort was meant to give our children a better life. And now Andrew wanted it all erased. He did not see the value of the sweat and pain that built the family home. He saw only numbers on paper, land to sell, savings to drain. David had been different. He would have carried on our name with honor. He would have protected us. His death left Andrew alone with us, and somewhere in those years, greed grew unchecked. The lake that nearly claimed my life tonight had already taken 1 son from me, and now it had nearly finished what it started. I sat up and stared at the water. The surface was calm again, reflecting the moonlight like silver. Anyone passing by would never know 2 bodies had floated there only moments ago. The lake held secrets. It had taken David. It had almost taken me, and I knew now it was holding the truth. Harold still had not spoken. We walked home in silence. Every step squelched in soaked shoes, each breath heavy with the weight of what we had endured. Inside the small house, I changed out of wet clothes, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat by the window. I could not sleep. The memories kept coming. The sacrifices that defined my life were no longer something I could be proud of. They had turned into weapons in Andrew's hands. He saw them as proof that we were weak, proof that we would give him everything without a fight. But tonight had changed that. Floating on that lake, staring death in the face, I realized I could not stay silent anymore. If sacrifice had shaped my past, survival would shape my future. The woman who gave everything away was gone. In her place stood someone ready to protect what was left. Harold finally spoke as dawn began to break. His voice was hoarse. "We cannot hide the truth forever." He looked at me with eyes that carried years of regret. My chest tightened. I knew what he meant. He was not just talking about Andrew's attack. He was talking about David. I said nothing, but my silence was an answer. We both knew this was no longer about surviving one night. This was about unearthing the past and facing the consequences. The lake had given us a second chance, but it demanded a price. The morning after the lake was too quiet. I sat at the table with a cup of tea that had already gone cold, staring at the wood grain and listening for sounds that never came. The house felt hollow, as if the walls themselves knew what had happened. Harold was outside, pacing the yard, his shoulders hunched, his head low. Neither of us had spoken much since his words before dawn. We carried our silence like a wound we did not want to open. But the world did not stop. By afternoon, Andrew and Sophie were at our door, all smiles, their clothes crisp, their voices light. I felt my stomach twist. They acted as though nothing had happened, as though we had not floated like corpses in the lake the night before. "Mum, Dad," Sophie said, stepping inside with a basket of fruit. "We thought you might need some fresh food." Her voice was honey, but her eyes scanned the room quickly, searching, measuring. Andrew followed close behind, setting his hand on my shoulder in a way that made my skin crawl. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "You both look tired. Maybe you should think about moving in with us. We can take care of everything." His words dropped like stones. I looked at Harold. His jaw was tight, his hand clenched against his leg. I could see him fighting to stay calm. I forced myself to nod, pretending to be weaker than I felt. "That's kind," I said, my voice low. "We'll think about it." Andrew smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He sat down uninvited, pulled the fruit basket closer, and began peeling an orange as if he owned the table. Sophie slipped beside him, brushing invisible dust off her skirt, her ring catching the light. "We've been talking," she said softly, "about the house, the land, the savings. It might be best to put it all in Andrew's name now. It will make things easier if anything happens." The pause in her words was deliberate. My heart pounded. I remembered Harold's warning. The truth he carried about David was still unsaid, but the danger in front of us was clear. Andrew's eyes stayed on me, sharp, daring me to argue. I breathed slowly. "That's a big decision. We'll need time." Andrew leaned forward. "Time is exactly what you don't have. You're both getting older. Things could change fast. Why wait until it's too late?" The orange peel twisted in his hand, the juice dripping onto the table like blood. He smiled as though he had made a clever point, but I saw the impatience underneath. Harold finally spoke. His voice was steady, but cold. "We'll handle our affairs in our own time. That's not up for debate today." Andrew's smile flickered, then returned. Of course, I just want to help. He tossed the orange peel aside and ate a slice, juice glistening on his lips. Sophie placed her hand on his arm. Don't push. They'll come around. Right, Mum? Her tone was sweet, but her eyes locked on mine, daring me to disagree. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak. When they left, the silence rushed back into the house. Harold sat heavily in his chair, staring at the floor. They won't stop, he said quietly. They'll keep pressing until they have everything. I swallowed hard. Then we need to be ready. The days that followed were filled with signs I could no longer ignore. Andrew called more often than he ever had before, his voice sharp when I hesitated to answer his questions. Sophie dropped by with excuses, always checking drawers, cupboards, glancing at papers left on the counter. Their visits were wrapped in politeness, but the pressure grew with every word, every look. Ivy came one evening, bringing a casserole. She placed it on the counter and studied me with worried eyes. Something's wrong, she said. I can feel it. They're circling you like vultures. You have to protect yourself. Her words stung because they were true. I wanted to believe Andrew could be saved, that somewhere inside him was the boy I had raised. But the boy was gone. What remained was a man driven by debt and greed. Ivy lowered her voice. I know about his loans. People talk. He owes money to men you don't want knocking at your door. He's desperate. Desperate men are dangerous. I felt the blood drain from my face. Harold stiffened in his chair, his hand gripping the armrest. He already showed us what he's capable of, I whispered. We can't pretend anymore. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I imagined Andrew's footsteps on the porch, Sophie's voice slipping through the door. The house that had once been my safe haven now felt like a trap. I thought of David again, his smile, his steady hands. He would have stood between us and danger. He would have never let greed consume him. The memory of him gave me strength, but it also burned me with regret. How had we raised two sons so different? One full of light, the other full of shadows. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I could not wait for Andrew to strike again. The signs were too clear. The questions, the visits, the pressure about the will. He was building towards something, and if we did not act first, we would not survive the next attempt. When Harold came into the kitchen, his face tired, I spoke quietly but firmly. We need to prepare. We can't let them corner us again. Whatever truth you're carrying about David, I need to know it. All of it. No more secrets. He looked at me, his eyes dark with sorrow. He opened his mouth, then closed it, fighting the words. I reached across the table and took his hand. If we don't face the past, we won't survive the present, I said. His hand trembled in mine. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, I saw what happened that night. David didn't fall. Andrew pushed him. The room spun. The truth I had buried for years roared back with brutal clarity. My breath caught in my chest, and tears blurred my vision. I pulled my hand away, covering my mouth, shaking. The boy I loved, the son I defended, had killed his own brother, and now he was coming for us. The truth settled between us like smoke that would not clear. Harold's words kept ringing in my ears. Andrew pushed David. My son had killed his own brother and carried that secret all these years. My body felt heavy, but my mind sharper than it had been in months. The danger was no longer a shadow. It was flesh and blood, sitting at my table, knocking at my door, smiling with false warmth. Later that same day, Andrew returned. He did not bother knocking. He walked in as if the house already belonged to him. Sophie followed, carrying a leather folder tucked under her arm. My stomach turned at the sight of it. Papers. Contracts. I knew what this was before they even spoke. Andrew dropped himself into Harold's chair, spreading his arms along the backrest, his legs stretched like he was staking a claim. His eyes were too bright, restless. "We need to settle this," he said flatly. "The house, the land, the savings. Sophie's uncle knows a lawyer who can file everything quickly. You just have to sign." Sophie laid the folder on the table and slid it toward me. "It's all prepared. Just your signatures are missing." Harold's face hardened. He did not reach for the folder. He did not even glance at it. I saw his jaw clench, the muscle twitching, and I braced myself for his anger, but he stayed silent. I forced my voice steady. "We're not ready to sign anything." Andrew leaned forward, his tone sharp. "Ready? What's there to be ready about? You're old. You're weak. Do you want to waste time dragging this out while the bank takes everything? I can handle it. I can save what you can't." My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to strike the table. But Harold placed his hand on mine under the wood, a warning to hold still. His grip was firm, grounding me. Sophie's smile did not waver. "This is for the best. You'll still live here. Nothing has to change. But on paper, Andrew will manage everything. That way bills get paid, loans get cleared, and you two can relax." Her words dripped with false care. I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was watching me, measuring how close I was to breaking. I pushed the folder back across the table. "No." The room froze. Andrew's hands tightened on the chair arms, his eyes darkened. For the first time, the mask slipped. "No," he said slowly. "You think you still have a choice?" Harold's voice cut in, sharp as a blade. "We built this home. We keep it in our name. That's final." Andrew shot to his feet, fists clenched. "You think you can stand in my way? After everything I've done? After what I've lost because of you?" His words spilled out too fast, too wild. For a second, I thought he might confess everything. Sophie grabbed his arm. "Not here," she whispered, eyes darting to me. Then she turned back, her tone smooth again. "We'll come back tomorrow. Think about it. Don't make this harder than it has to be." They left without another word. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. I turned to Harold. My hands were shaking. "He's escalating. He won't stop until he has it." Harold nodded slowly. "I know." That night, I could not rest. Every sound outside made me jump. A car on the road, branches scraping the roof, the distant bark of a dog. I imagined Andrew's face in the dark, waiting, planning. The folder sat on the table, left behind by Sophie. I opened it once, scanning the pages. Legal words, signatures lines, dates, the theft spelled out in black ink. I burned the thought of signing from my mind. If we signed, it would not stop them. It would only hand them everything faster. The next morning, Andrew returned alone. His mood was different, harder. He did not smile. He placed both hands on the table and leaned close. "I'm done asking," he said. "You will sign today. If you don't, there will be consequences." I looked straight at him, my fear burned away by rage. "Consequences? From our own son?" His eyes narrowed. "You don't want to find out?" I felt Harold step forward beside me. He spoke calmly, but his words cut. "You've already shown us who you are. We're not giving you one more inch." Andrew stared at us for a long moment. Then he laughed, a short, bitter sound. Fine, if that's how you want it. Don't be surprised when life gets harder. You think you're safe here? You're not. Not anymore. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. I stood frozen, my breath shallow. The warning was clear. He would not stop with threats. The pressure was building, and I could feel the break coming. Harold turned to me. We need to prepare. Whatever comes next, we can't be caught off guard. I nodded. The path ahead was dark, but I knew one thing. Andrew had crossed a line that could never be undone. There was no going back to being a family. There was only survival now. Ivy came by the next afternoon, her footsteps quick on the porch, her knock sharp against the wood. When I opened the door, she stepped in without waiting, her eyes already scanning my face. She carried no basket this time, only worry. I saw Andrew in town, she said, lowering her voice as soon as the door shut. He was talking too loud, bragging, like a man who thinks he has everything under control. Something's wrong. You need to be careful. I guided her to the table where the folder still sat, untouched but heavy like a curse. She sat down and pressed her palm against it, as if she could feel the poison inside. "What has he said to you?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "He came here. Twice. He wants us to sign everything over. He isn't asking any more, Ivy. He's demanding. He said there would be consequences if we refused." Her face tightened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "That boy is dangerous. People talk in town. He's not just in debt. He owes money to men who will break bones if they are not paid. He's desperate, and desperate people don't care who they hurt." Harold entered the room then, silent until he leaned against the doorframe. His eyes were fixed on Ivy. "We know. He's already tried once." Ivy's head snapped up. "What do you mean, tried?" I shook my head quickly. "Not now. It's too much." But Harold's expression did not change. He wanted the truth out. "He tried to kill us," Harold said quietly. "On the lake. He thought we drowned. That's the kind of man he is now." Ivy's hand flew to her mouth. "My God." The silence that followed was heavy. I saw in her eyes the same disbelief I had felt. She wanted to argue, to call it impossible, but she knew us too well. She trusted us more than she trusted her nephew. "He won't stop," she whispered finally. "You have to tell someone. The sheriff, maybe." Harold shook his head. "Not yet. Without proof, it's just our word against his. He'll twist it, make us look old, confused. He's good at pretending." Ivy turned to me. "Then you can't be alone with him again. Promise me that." I nodded, though my chest ached with the weight of the promise. That night I couldn't shake Ivy's words. Every creak in the floor, every shift of wind against the house felt like a warning. Harold tried to rest, but I saw him sit up more than once, listening, his body tense. We were trapped between fear of speaking and fear of silence. The next morning I saw Sophie's car parked down the road. She was sitting inside, engine running, watching the house. She didn't come to the door. She just sat there, her face calm, her eyes fixed. I closed the curtain slowly and turned away, my heart pounding. It was not a visit. It was surveillance. Later Ivy returned, this time with news. "I asked around," she said. "Andrew borrowed money from a man named Grant. Not just a few hundred. Tens of thousands. He bragged about using your house as leverage, though he doesn't even own it. If he doesn't pay, they'll come looking." Her words hit me like a stone to the chest. Andrew had not only betrayed us, he had put us in danger with strangers who cared nothing about family. I looked at Harold and saw the same fear mirrored in his eyes. "We can't let him drag us under with him," I said. Ivy reached across the table and gripped my hand. "Then you have to fight back. You've spent your life protecting him. That time is over. Protect yourselves now." Her voice carried a firmness that settled deep in me. For years I had defended Andrew, explained away his faults, covered his tracks. But Ivy was right. That time had passed. That evening, Harold and I sat together by the window, the sky darkening over the lake. He spoke first. "I kept the truth about David to protect Andrew, but all I did was make him stronger in his lies. I can't carry it anymore." I stared at him, my throat tight. "If we tell, everything changes. The family, the memory of David, all of it." He shook his head. "It already changed the moment Andrew put his hands on us." His words settled deep in my chest. I knew he was right. The past we had buried was rising whether we wanted it or not. Andrew's greed had dragged it back to the surface, and now we had no choice but to face it. The night closed in, and with it the realization that we were no longer parents trying to reason with a wayward son. We were targets, and the people around us were beginning to see it too. Ivy had spoken the truth out loud. Andrew was dangerous. Andrew was desperate, and he was not finished with us yet. I went to bed with a single thought pressing in my mind. If our own voices were not enough to expose him, then we would need proof. Without it, Andrew's lies would swallow us whole. The days blurred into each other, but the tension only grew sharper. Andrew's visits became shorter, colder, and more demanding. Sophie's watchful eyes followed every move we made. I could feel them circling closer, like hunters wearing us down. I kept thinking about Ivy's warning and Harold's confession. The truth was pressing against us, demanding to be spoken. It came to a head one night as the wind whipped across the lake. Harold sat at the table, his hands folded tightly, his gaze fixed on the window, though he wasn't really looking at anything. I knew the look. It was the same one he wore the night David died. He finally broke the silence. "I can't keep this locked inside anymore." I set down the cup I was holding, my fingers trembling. "Then say it. Say what you've carried all these years." His voice was low, rough. "David didn't slip. He didn't stumble. I saw it happen. Andrew pushed him." The air drained from the room. I had heard the words before in fragments, but this time there was no hesitation, no softening. Harold was laying it bare. "He killed his own brother," Harold said, his knuckles white against the table. "It was over money. David caught him stealing from the savings jar in the shed. They argued. Andrew shoved him. David fell, hit the rocks, and the water swallowed him. By the time I got there, it was too late." My chest tightened, the memory of that night crashing back. The sheriff had called it a tragic accident. We buried David with questions that never left me. But Harold had known. He had seen it with his own eyes and said nothing. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell anyone?" Harold's face twisted with shame. "Because he was my son too. I thought if I kept it hidden, if I gave him a chance, he could change. I thought protecting him was the same as protecting you." Tears blurred my vision. "You let me believe it was an accident. You let me grieve without knowing the truth. You let him walk free under our roof." Harold's voice cracked. "I was wrong, and now we're paying for it." The silence that followed was unbearable. The walls seemed to close in. The house that had once held love was suffocating with betrayal. I stood and paced, my mind racing. The image of Andrew as a boy, his smile, his laughter, All of it had been a mask for something darker. I thought of Sophie, feeding his greed, encouraging his cruelty. Together they were dangerous beyond anything I had feared. Finally, I stopped and faced Harold. We can't carry this alone anymore. If the truth about David doesn't come out, Andrew will keep winning. He already believes he's untouchable. We need proof, Harold. Proof of what he did then and what he's trying to do now. He nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same. I kept a box in the shed. David's wallet, the broken jar, some notes he wrote the day before. I couldn't throw them away. They may not be enough, but it's something. The thought of that box sent a chill through me. Relics of the night our family shattered. Evidence Harold had hidden even from me. Bring it inside, I said. We'll keep it safe. And we'll add to it. Recordings, anything we can catch from Andrew. If he wants to trap us, we'll trap him first. That night, Harold fetched the box. Dust clung to the lid, but inside were the pieces of a story buried too long. A wallet with a photograph of David, a glass shard from the jar, and a slip of paper with numbers scrawled in David's hand. Evidence of money gone missing, proof that he had caught Andrew stealing. I held the paper in my hands, my tears falling onto the faded ink. It was David's voice reaching across the years, telling us he knew. And now we knew too. Harold placed a small recorder on the table. We'll use this the next time they come. We'll let him speak his own guilt. I nodded, wiping my eyes. The grief and anger inside me had hardened into resolve. For too long we had been silent. For too long we had let Andrew write the story. That ended now. The wind outside rattled the windows, the lake roaring in the distance. It sounded like David's voice carried through the storm, urging us to stand. I looked at Harold and felt the weight of what was to come. The fight was no longer just about protecting our home. It was about finally bringing the truth into the light. The storm that had been building finally broke when Andrew returned. He did not bother with pleasantries, did not even pretend to smile this time. Sophie stood close behind him, her arms crossed, her chin lifted like she had already claimed victory. Andrew's eyes scanned the room, sharp and restless, before landing on the box on the counter. He could not know what it held, but I saw suspicion flicker across his face. "You've had enough time," he said flatly. "I'm done waiting. You're going to sign the papers now." Harold rose slowly from his chair, his back straight despite the tremor in his hands. "We already told you we're not signing anything." Andrew slammed his fist against the table, the sound rattling the cups. "Do you want me to spell it out? You don't have a choice. If you won't give it willingly, I'll take it another way." Sophie's voice slipped in, low and measured. "Andrew, calm down. Let's not waste more time. They're just being stubborn. Once it's in writing, there's nothing they can do." She looked at me directly, her eyes cold. "If you care about your safety, you'll cooperate." The air was heavy, the kind of silence that could snap into violence at any second. My heart pounded, but I forced my voice steady. "You've already tried to get rid of us once. You failed. Do you think we don't know what you're capable of?" Andrew froze, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" Harold stepped forward, his voice like stone. "The lake. You wanted us gone. You thought we drowned. But we didn't. And now we see you for what you are." For a moment, Andrew's mask slipped. His mouth opened, then shut again. His eyes darted to Sophie, who shifted uneasily. The truth had landed between us, undeniable. He tried to recover. "You're crazy. No one would believe that. You're old, confused. People will take my word over yours." But his voice cracked, and I heard the panic under his bravado. "You can lie all you want," I said. But the truth has a way of coming out. Andrew's face twisted, anger overtaking fear. He leaned across the table, his breath hot. You think you're clever. You think you can fight me. But you're nothing without me. You're weak. You've always been weak. Harold did not move, did not flinch. We're stronger than you think. The tension snapped when Andrew reached for the folder Sophie had brought, shoving it across the table toward us. Sign it. Now. I pushed it back with a single motion. No. The room erupted. Andrew's chair clattered to the floor as he lunged forward. Sophie grabbed his arm, hissing his name, but he shook her off. His voice rose, harsh and raw. If you won't sign, then don't expect mercy. I'll make sure you regret this. Both of you. Harold's hand brushed mine under the table, steadying me. We had agreed to stay calm, to let Andrew's own words betray him. The small recorder sat hidden, capturing every threat, every slip of his mask. Andrew stormed toward the door, then spun back, his finger stabbing the air. This isn't over. Next time I won't miss. Sophie followed, her eyes lingering on me one last time. There was no pity in them, only calculation. Then the door slammed shut, the echo shaking through the house. The silence afterward was louder than their shouting. I sat still, my pulse racing, the weight of what had just happened pressing into my chest. Harold reached for the recorder, his face grim. We have it, he said softly. Proof. I nodded, though fear still clung to me. Andrew's threats were not empty. He was cornered now, desperate, and desperate men did not stop. That night, I lay awake listening to the wind rattle the windows. Every gust felt like footsteps, every shadow like a figure waiting outside. Andrew's words replayed in my mind. Next time, I won't miss. But beneath the fear was something else. Resolve. He had shown us his true face. The lies, the charm, the false smiles were gone. All that remained was raw greed and rage, and now we had his voice to prove it. Harold turned to me in the dark. It's only a matter of time before he tries again. I whispered back. Then we'll be ready. The house felt different after Andrew's outburst. The air was heavier, the silence sharper. Harold and I knew his threats were not idle. He would come back, and the next time he would not settle for words. That night, as the wind rattled the shutters, we sat at the kitchen table with the recorder between us. The small machine had captured his rage, every threat clear and undeniable. It was the only shield we had, and it suddenly felt too fragile. We cannot rely on this alone, Harold said, his voice low. He will find a way to twist it. We need more. Something he cannot talk his way out of. I nodded, my fingers tightening around my cup. Then we need a plan. No more waiting for him to strike. If he wants to corner us, we'll be ready. The decision was heavy but necessary. We would no longer stand still while Andrew circled us. We would prepare in silence, as if nothing had changed, but every step would be aimed at exposing him. The next morning, Harold went to the shed and returned with an old metal box. Inside were scraps of the past, David's wallet, the broken shard of glass, the slip of paper with his handwriting. I held the faded note, my chest aching at the sight of his letters. It felt like David was reaching across the years to guide us now. This is proof he was stealing even then, Harold said. Combined with what we have now, it paints the whole picture. I placed the items carefully into a new box, one we could keep hidden inside the house. We'll guard this with everything we have. Over the next days, we worked quietly. Harold checked locks, repaired broken latches, and placed the recorder in different corners whenever Andrew came by. I kept notes of every conversation, every look, every threat. We moved like ghosts through our own home, outwardly calm, inwardly braced for the storm we knew was coming. Ivy returned, her eyes sharp, her voice urgent. He's restless. People in town say he's snapping at anyone who mentions money. Sophie's been seen arguing with him in public. He's unraveling. I felt a chill at her words. Desperation was the most dangerous state Andrew could be in. If his debts were closing in, he would see us not as family, but as his last lifeline. That evening, Sophie appeared alone. She carried no folder, no smile. She stood at the doorway, her posture stiff. "I came to warn you," she said quietly. "Andrew is not himself. He's furious that you defied him. I can't hold him back much longer." Her words startled me, but I studied her face. I could not tell if it was genuine fear or another act. "Why are you telling us this?" I asked. She hesitated, her eyes darting away. "Because if he goes too far, I'll be dragged down with him. I don't want that. I thought I could manage him, but he's slipping beyond my control." Harold's voice was flat. "Then help us stop him." Sophie shook her head quickly. "I can't. Not openly, but be careful. He's planning something. Soon." She left as suddenly as she had come, leaving a chill in her wake. I turned to Harold, my stomach knotted. "Do we believe her?" He rubbed his temples. "Whether she meant it or not, the warning is real. He's planning something, and we need to be ahead of him." That night we set another plan. Harold placed a second recorder inside his jacket, one Andrew would never notice. We rehearsed what we would say, how we would push him just enough to make him spill his true intentions. It was a dangerous game, but it was the only way to catch him fully. The following day, Andrew returned, his mood darker than ever. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands restless. He paced the room like a predator. "You've embarrassed me," he spat. "People in town are whispering. Do you know what that does to me? Do you know what kind of trouble I'm in?" I sat still, my voice calm. "If you're in trouble, it's because of your own choices. Don't put that on us." His head snapped toward me, his face twisted. "You think you're innocent? Everything you have should be mine. You kept me begging while you saved for yourselves. You think I don't know? You owe me. And if you don't pay, I'll take it." Every word was being captured, every ounce of his fury sealed into proof. Harold stayed steady, drawing him further out. "Take it how? By stealing from us? By trying to kill us?" Andrew's fists clenched. For a moment I thought he might strike. Then his mouth curved into a smile that chilled me to the bone. Maybe worse. You'll see soon enough." He left soon after, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I exhaled slowly, my whole body trembling. Harold touched the recorder hidden in his jacket. "We got him. It's enough to show he's dangerous. More than enough." But as I looked out the window and saw his car disappearing down the road, dread washed over me. The proof was there, but so was his rage. He knew his time was running out, and that made him more dangerous than ever. That night the lake was calm, but I could not rest. I lay awake, listening to every sound, knowing the silence was only the surface. Beneath it, something darker was moving, waiting for the right moment to strike. Andrew returned 2 days later, and this time he did not bother to hide the storm inside him. He kicked the door open so hard it banged against the wall. Sophie trailed behind, her face pale, but she said nothing. His eyes locked on us, wild and furious, like he had finally decided to finish what he started. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "You think you can defy me and walk away? I warned you. Now I'm done playing games." Harold and I stood our ground. The recorder was hidden again, ready to capture every word. My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "What do you want from us, Andrew?" He sneered. "Everything. The house, the land, the money. All of it should have been mine long ago. You should have signed when you had the chance. But since you refused, I'll take it my way." He pulled a folded document from his pocket and threw it onto the table. "A power of attorney. Sign it, and I take control. Refuse, and you won't live to regret it." Sophie's voice broke through, sharp but trembling. "Andrew, stop. This isn't the way." He spun on her, his face twisted with rage. "Shut up. You've had your chance to help me. Now you'll watch me end this." I felt Harold's hand steady on my back. He stepped forward, his tone sharp. "You already tried once to end us. You failed then, and you'll fail again." Andrew froze, his eyes narrowing. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then he laughed, a sound that cut like glass. "So you admit it. You know. You survived." His words spilled out, his temper loosening his tongue. "I should have held you under myself. I should have watched the bubbles stop. That mistake won't happen again." The recorder captured every syllable. His own confession, raw and undeniable, was sealed into proof. Harold stood taller. "There it is. Your own voice betraying you." Andrew's face went pale, then red. He realized too late that he had given us what we needed. "You think anyone will believe you over me? You think you'll even live long enough to show anyone?" He lunged across the table, grabbing Harold by the collar. I shouted and tried to pull him off, but his strength was fueled by rage. Harold gasped, his hands clawing at Andrew's grip. Sophie finally screamed, rushing forward. "Andrew, stop! You'll kill him!" He shoved her aside, his focus fixed on Harold. The table crashed against the wall, chairs scattering. For a moment I thought Harold would collapse under his son's fury. But Harold's eyes flashed with something fierce. With one sudden movement, he shoved Andrew back, breaking free of his grip. Andrew stumbled, his head striking the edge of the table. He cursed, blood running down his temple, but his rage only grew. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a knife. The sight froze me. My own son stood before me with a blade, his intent clear. Sophie's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "No, Andrew, don't!" He pointed the knife at us, his voice low and cold. "If I can't have it, no one will." The moment stretched like a lifetime. The knife glinted in the dim light, his breathing heavy. Harold moved slightly in front of me, his chest rising and falling steady. "You won't win," Harold said. "Even if you end us, the truth will bury you." Andrew snarled and stepped forward. I braced myself, my body trembling but my mind clear. If this was the moment it ended, I would not beg. But the sound of tires on gravel broke the silence. A car pulled up outside, doors slamming, voices approached. Andrew froze, his eyes darting to the window. Sophie gasped. "It's the sheriff." Andrew's grip on the knife faltered, his face twisted between fury and panic. "You called them?" I met his eyes. "No, you did this to yourself." The knock on the door was loud, commanding. "Sheriff's Department, open up." Andrew's chest heaved, his hand shaking around the knife. For a moment, I thought he might strike anyway, but Sophie grabbed his arm. "Don't, Andrew. It's over." The sheriff's voice came again. "Andrew, drop the weapon. Step outside." The room was still, every breath loud. Then Andrew roared, slamming the knife onto the table, the blade sinking into the wood. He backed away, his hands raised, his face a mask of hate. The sheriff and two deputies entered, their guns steady. On the ground now. Andrew dropped to his knees, his eyes never leaving us. This isn't over, he spat. You'll regret this. But the cuffs clicked around his wrists, the metal final and cold. As they led him out, Sophie followed silently, her face pale, her eyes hollow. The house was left in silence, but it was a silence filled with trembling relief. Harold and I stood together, staring at the knife still quivering in the table. The storm had broken, but I knew it was not the end. It was only the start of the reckoning. The morning after Andrew's arrest, the house felt hollow. The knife marks still scarred the table, the echo of his threats lingering in the walls. Harold sat at the counter, staring at the recorder in his hands. "This is what will finish it," he said quietly. I nodded, though my stomach twisted. Evidence was one thing, but facing our own son in court would cut deeper than anything else. By noon, the sheriff returned. His boots carried the weight of news, his face serious. He laid a folder on the table. "We have him in custody. But you need to understand, he's already trying to spin this. Says you provoked him, says you've lost your minds. He's got Sophie repeating parts of his story." I clenched my hands. She knows the truth. She was here when he pulled the knife. She saw it. The sheriff sighed. "Fear makes people do strange things. If she thinks standing by him keeps her safe, she'll keep lying. That's why your recordings matter. They show his intent. But I'll be honest, this case is going to tear open every corner of your family. Are you ready for that?" Harold spoke before I could. "We've lived under his shadow long enough. We're ready." That night, I could not sleep. Every creak of the floorboards felt like Andrew's footsteps returning. I lay awake, replaying his face when the cuffs closed around his wrists. There was no remorse, no fear, only venom. His words haunted me. This isn't over. The following week, we were summoned to the county office. The courthouse loomed tall and cold, its steps echoing under our shoes. Inside, Andrew sat behind glass, his eyes locked on us with a stare that pierced through the barrier. Sophie sat in the back, her hands folded tightly, her face unreadable. The prosecutor met us in a side room. She was sharp-eyed, her voice brisk. "We'll need you both to testify. Your son is claiming this was all a misunderstanding, a family dispute blown out of proportion. He's also denying any attempt on your lives at the lake." Harold set the recorder on the table. "Play it. Every word is there." The prosecutor pressed play. Andrew's voice filled the room. His threats were clear, his confession about the lake undeniable. The sound made my stomach knot, but it was truth. It was our weapon. The prosecutor nodded. "This will hold, but be prepared. He'll fight dirty. His lawyer will drag up anything they can to discredit you." We left the office, heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. Outside, Sophie intercepted us. Her voice was hushed, almost frantic. "I didn't know he'd go that far. I thought he just wanted control, not blood." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. "You stood by him while he tried to erase us." Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I was afraid. But now, I can't keep covering for him. If they ask me, I'll tell the truth." Her words hung in the air, fragile but vital. Harold placed a hand on my arm, urging silence. We walked away, leaving her trembling on the courthouse steps. The trial moved faster than I expected. The town buzzed with whispers. Neighbors avoided our eyes in the market, while others offered hushed words of support. It felt as if everyone was watching, waiting to see how the story would end. The day we took the stand, the courtroom was packed. Andrew sat at the defense table, his hair neat, his suit crisp, but his eyes burned with hatred. When he smiled at me, it was the same smile he wore as a boy when he thought he had gotten away with something. The prosecutor led us through the testimony. I spoke of the night at the lake, of his words, his laughter when he thought we were gone. My voice shook, but I did not falter. Harold recounted the threats in our home, the knife, the rage. Then the recorder was played, Andrew's voice booming through the courtroom. The room shifted, jurors leaned forward, their faces hardening as the words echoed. I should have held you under myself. I should have watched the bubbles stop. The defense tried to paint it as anger, not intent. They tried to suggest our memories were clouded, our age a weakness. But the tape cut through every argument. His voice betrayed him. When it ended, Andrew slammed his hand on the table. They're lying. They twisted everything. His lawyer tried to quiet him, but the damage was done. The judge's gavel struck hard, calling for order, but the jurors had already seen the truth. We stepped down from the stand, our bodies trembling but our resolve intact. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter, though the fight was not yet finished. Harold looked at me, his eyes tired but steady. We've turned the tide. I nodded, feeling the weight lift just enough to breathe. For the first time in a long time, I believed we might actually see the end of this battle. The trial dragged into its second week, each day a battle of words and evidence. Andrew sat at the defense table with his lawyer whispering in his ear, but his eyes never left us. They burned with the same fury I had seen at the house, at the lake, every time he thought control was slipping through his hands. Sophie was called to testify, and the entire room held its breath when she stepped to the stand. Her hands shook as she swore the oath. She avoided Andrew's stare, her gaze fixed on the floor until the prosecutor asked the first question. Mrs. Bennett, were you present the night Andrew demanded his parents sign over control of their property? Her voice trembled. Yes. And did you see him produce a weapon? Tears welled in her eyes. Yes, a knife. Andrew shot forward, his chair scraping loudly. Liar! You're doing this to save yourself. The judge's gavel struck hard, silencing the outburst. The bailiff moved closer to Andrew, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in Sophie's eyes turn into resolve. She straightened her shoulders. I covered for him before. I thought I could control him, that it would never go this far. But I saw what he did. I heard what he said. He meant to kill them, and I can't hide it anymore. The courtroom murmured, a low wave of whispers. The defense lawyer scrambled to discredit her, pressing about loyalty and marriage, but her words had already struck deep. She described his temper, his debts, the way he spoke of us as obstacles to be cleared. Each sentence peeled away the mask Andrew had tried to wear. When the prosecutor rested, Andrew's lawyer made one last desperate attempt. He painted Sophie as bitter, claimed she only turned against him to save herself from charges. But the jury had heard the recordings, seen Andrew's rage firsthand, and now Sophie's testimony sealed it. That night, Harold and I sat in the quiet of our kitchen. The recorder lay on the table between us, the same one that had carried our survival. Tomorrow the jury decides, Harold said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I nodded, though my chest was tight. The thought of hearing a verdict on our own son was a weight I could hardly bear. Yet I knew the truth was bigger than blood. It was about ending the terror that had poisoned our home for too long. The next day, the courthouse was packed again. Neighbors, strangers, people who had whispered in markets now came to see the end of it. The jury filed in, their faces solemn. My heart pounded so loud I could hardly hear the foreman speak at first. On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendant, Guilty. The word slammed into the room. Andrew's head jerked back as if struck. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The foreman continued. On the charge of attempted coercion and fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge thanked the jury, then turned to Andrew. His sentence would come later, but in that moment, the gavel brought down a finality I had long prayed for. Andrew leapt to his feet, shouting, "This is a lie! You set me up! You'll pay for this!" Deputies grabbed his arms, forcing him down. His eyes found mine, filled with hatred. "You're not my family. You never were." I did not look away. My voice was steady, though my heart ached. "You made that choice yourself." As he was dragged from the room, Sophie remained in her seat, her shoulders shaking as silent tears fell. For a long time I did not move, my body frozen by the weight of it all. When the courtroom finally cleared, Harold took my hand. "It's over," he said softly. But I knew it was not truly over. The scars would remain, carved into us as deep as the knife mark in our table. Yet the fear had lifted. For the first time in years, the house no longer felt like a cage. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the lake, I stood on the porch and let the quiet wash over me. The water reflected gold and crimson, calm and endless. I thought of David, of the truth finally spoken, of the justice that had come too late but still arrived. Harold joined me, his hand warm in mine. Neither of us spoke. We simply stood together, breathing in the peace we had fought so hard to reclaim. The sentencing came a month later. The courthouse was quieter this time, the crowd smaller, but the weight of the moment pressed just as heavy. Harold and I sat together in the front row, hands clasped, waiting to hear the final word on the son who had nearly destroyed us. Andrew was led in wearing the plain orange of the jail. His face was thinner, his eyes restless, but he held his chin high. When he glanced our way, there was no fire in his stare, only a strange emptiness. Sophie was not there. She had left him after her testimony, moving back to her parents' home. That truth seemed to weigh on him more than the chains at his wrists. The judge entered, her tone calm and steady as she recounted the charges. Attempted murder, fraud, coercion. Each word fell like a stone. Then came the sentence. 15 years in prison, with no chance of early release. The gavel struck once, sealing his fate. Andrew turned toward us as deputies prepared to take him away. His voice was low, almost hoarse. "I thought I hated you. I thought everything you had should have been mine. But now I see I was only destroying myself." For the first time, his words were not laced with rage. They carried a tired honesty, the kind that came when there was nothing left to fight for. I held his gaze. My heart was torn between the mother who had once rocked him to sleep and the woman who had nearly been killed by his hands. But in that moment, I chose to speak truth. "Andrew, you will have time to think, to change. What you did cannot be undone, but it does not have to be the end of you." His eyes filled with something I had not seen in years. Regret. Then he lowered his head and allowed the deputies to lead him away. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. The storm that had shadowed us for years had broken at last. Harold and I stood on the steps, the sun warming our faces. "It's done," he whispered. I nodded, though I knew healing would take time. Justice had been served, but forgiveness was another road we would walk slowly. Back at the lake, the water was calm, reflecting the sky like glass. I stood at the edge and let the breeze wash over me. I thought of David, of the truth finally spoken, and of Andrew facing the consequences of choices he had made. Justice was not vengeance, it was balance, restoring what had been shattered. Harold came to my side, his hand slipping into mine. Together we watched the ripples stretch across the surface. We were scarred but standing, broken but not beaten. And in that silence, I felt something fragile take root. Hope. We had survived betrayal. We had faced the darkest truth a parent can face. Yet here we stood, alive, carrying the lesson that justice and mercy can walk side by side. I'm grateful you stayed with me through this story. If it touched you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Share in the comments where you are listening from, and tell me what forgiveness and justice mean to you. Every voice matters, and your stories help remind us that no one is ever truly alone. Together we can find strength in the hardest truths and hope in the places we least expect. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to sharing the next chapter with you.